Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this morning's Speakers for Schools virtual talk. We're delighted you've been able to join us. This session will last for around 40 to 45 minutes and will include a presentation from our speaker before we move to Q&A with viewers. Today's speaker is Jonty Bloom. Jonty is a journalist and is joining us today to discuss preparing for the future world of work, and we hope you all have lots of questions for him. Submitted questions will be reviewed by our team of moderators, and when approved, they will appear on the live question and answer thread. Not all submitted questions will appear on the live thread. This is to avoid duplication in questions, but rest assured they will have been received. You can also submit questions on Twitter and Instagram using the hashtag SFSVTalk. That's SFSVTalk. Jonty, hi, welcome to your first virtual talk.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Kylie. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wimbledon, where I'm broadcasting from, where we're in lockdown as you are. I'm putting on weight quicker than a turkey being fattened up for Christmas. And my wife is cutting my hair, as you can probably tell. And the only thing keeping us sane is the dog, which we get to take out occasionally. So if you hear barking or scratching at the door, don't worry, it's the dog. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about actually is lockdown. And you may not think this will directly affect work, or that maybe you're falling behind at school, and it will, but it won't. You will catch up. And I know your teachers want to teach you online, giving you homework, doing Zoom lessons and all those things, essays, but you can do far more than that. I read a lot of biography and history of interesting people, and you would be amazed how many of them either taught themselves or were ill as children and were kept off school for significant periods of time. And we're talking about 100, 150 years ago, when if you were an ill child, you were basically put to bed for a couple of years. And they all did remarkably well and had very successful lives. And the common theme was that when they were ill, instead of just going online and doing social chatting, which they couldn't do because the internet hadn't been invented, they read books. They just read a book or two books a day. And you can do the same, okay? You've got plenty of spare time, and the books, you don't have to go to the library or anything like that now. They're all available on your iPad or whatever, and you can read a book a day. And it doesn't really matter what you read, apparently. Read all the books by one author. Read all the science books you can find. Read all the maths books you can find. Read all the cookery books you can find, if that's what's interesting you. You can go online and find the 1,000 best novels in the world, or the 100 best history books in the world, and just read those, and you will come out remarkably well educated and very knowledgeable in certain areas, and it will stand you in very good stead. Now, that's just what you should be doing at the moment. But I spent 30 years plus at the BBC, about 35 years as a journalist. And I spent the last 9 as a business correspondent at the BBC, which is a pretty serious position. And in that role, I traveled the world. I've been all over Europe. I've been to America more times than I can remember. I've been to Brazil, China, India, Russia, quite a few other places. I've met and interviewed everyone from a billionaire to the unemployed labourer in India. I've been to more factories than I can remember, and I've picked up quite a lot about the world of work, and that's what I want to talk to you about. Normally when I do this talk in a school, the first thing I do is I get about 100 students, maybe 15, 16, 17 years old, in the hall, and I start the talk by asking a question. And I say, how many of you have got a cunning plan, which is that you're going to be famous? You're going to win a talent show, you're going to become an internet star, you're going to become an influencer, whatever that is. You're going to do something famous and make lots of money. And about 5 or 6 people in that 100 will put their hands up and say, yeah, that's my plan. There are probably another 4 or 5 who realize it's a trick question and don't put their hands up. And that's the point. If 10 out of 100 people in every school think that their career path is going to be fame and fortune, you don't have to be very good at maths to work out that it can't possibly be true, because neither you nor I nor anybody else knows 500 famous people, let alone 5,000 or 50,000. All right. So if your plan, your cunning plan for the world of work is to just be famous, to become a musician, a film star, or whatever else, I suggest you have a backup plan, because 99.99% of you are going to fail. All right. Ask your parents, ask your teachers. They will all know of people who were famous for 6 months when they were young, who are now flipping burgers in a van in a lay-by on a main road somewhere. It happens. Very few people make enough money being famous, and very few people become famous. So your backup plan is going to be this. It is, you're going to have to get the best possible education and skills you can to survive in the world of work. I'm afraid the message is your teachers are right. You're just going to have to work hard at school, okay? Doing well at school and getting a good education basically makes you employable. It's the key to success, all right? Doing A-levels means that on average you will earn more than people who haven't done A-levels. Doing a degree means you will earn more than people who just have A-levels, and billionaires as a group have a disproportionate number of PhDs. They are almost without fail very, very well educated. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes. The longer you stay in education, the better educated you are and the more chances of being very well paid there are. It's just as simple as that. It is a straight line on a graph. Level of education against average earnings is a straight line, okay? But you, as an age group, as children, have several huge advantages. The biggest one is this, okay? And I'm going to explain it by actually telling you a little story. If you go to the Design Museum in London, there is one room which has got a huge wall. And on that wall, there are maps and compasses, measuring tapes, telephones, telexes, record players, TVs, radios, ticket machines from railway stations, bus timetables, 1,001 objects. And you get to the end of that wall and you think, this is all very interesting. What's the point? And at the end of the wall, there is a little case. And in the case, there is one of those, a mobile phone. And then there's a little sign. And it says, everything on that wall used to be a separate machine. And now your mobile phone can do that and 1,000 other things as well, right? That's one of the most important things I've ever seen in a museum. It was really quite impressive. It makes you think, because that's what we mean when we talk about this being a knowledge-based economy. You know, economies have always been based on knowledge, but not so much as now. And it's increasing at a huge rate. The speed of technological change is immense compared to any time in economic history. And you have one big advantage. It is now changing so fast that oldies like me can't keep up, right? When a new app or a new technology comes out, I might bother to learn the basics. When I signed up to give this talk, the people at Speakers from School had to phone me up 5 times to get me to turn on this system. Microsoft Talk. I just couldn't do it. You know, I kept falling over. I couldn't download the app. You know, I'm an idiot. You, however, being young, have been brought up with technology. You have absorbed this. You move effortlessly from one app to another, from one new phone to another. And this gives you a huge advantage. So next time, don't just use the latest app or computer or phone or gadget. Learn about it and improve it, okay? Do it very well, do it better than others, learn the science and the maths and the coding behind it, how to adapt it, how to improve it, maybe how to develop it yourself so you become an internet entrepreneur, or you sell an app to someone for a small fortune because you've seen something that they haven't. And this will stand you in very good stead, because when you go into the world of work and you're the only person in the room who really knows how the technology works, you're going to be king, right? You're going to be the go-to person that everybody looks up to because you know what it says on page 50 of the instruction manual when they've only bothered reading the first 2, right? This is going to give you a huge advantage. And the reason you need that advantage is the world of work has been changing recently. It's doing what is called hourglassing. You know what an hourglass looks like? It's, you know, thick at the top, thin in the middle, thick at the bottom. And it's called hourglassing because workforces for centuries were basically a pyramid. There were lots of manual laborers at the bottom, then there were fewer semi-skilled people, even fewer skilled people, then there was middle management, then there was management, and right at the top there was a very small apex of peak people who were the elite at the very top who were earning a small fortune. That has changed, right? Automation means means there are far fewer people who are just manual labourers or working on the shop floor. Robots are taking over this business at an increasing speed. Even though we are making more and more and more, fewer and fewer people are actually working in factories on the shop floor. And then computers have taken out lots of middle management, right? There used to be lots of things that you needed to be semi-skilled or a blue-collar worker. Working in an office as a white-collar worker was a promotion. Those promotions are more difficult to get now because there's fewer people working in those offices. And then right at the top, you have an expanding group of a relatively small number who have become very, very knowledgeable, very, very skilled, and very, very rich. And what you want to be is in that top bit. You don't want to be in the bottom bit. Manual workers are rapidly disappearing. The pay is terrible. The work is hard. You don't want to be doing that. It's likely that that trend is going to continue. And it's technology and education that's going to get you to the top of that hourglass. Okay, so the first 3 points are: use the lockdown to study and read anything you want. If you'd taken up French or German at the start of this lockdown, you'd be virtually fluent by now. Okay, remember, the best way to succeed is to stay in education as long as possible. The statistics don't lie. It's better education means more pay. That's just the end of it. And exploit your knowledge of technology. Your generation owns it, and you can prosper by knowing more about it than anybody else. Okay. There are, however, other factors that are going to help you get ahead, and other ways of getting ahead. And I'm going to just talk to you about some of those for a few minutes, right? One of the first times I gave this talk at a school, it was in Portsmouth. And I was saying some of the things you want to put on your CV aren't about exams and things. It's about achievements, being in the Scouts and the Cadets and playing sports and everything like that. Employers like that stuff because it means you're a team player, that you know something about leadership, that you're willing to go the extra mile, that you're fit, all these kind of things. So I said to this class, I said, any of you got any sporting achievements you think you should put in your CV? And nobody stuck their hands up. And the teachers all pointed at this very timid, shy, very small young woman in the middle of the classroom and said, ask Emma. So I said, well, Emma, what have you done, sporting wise, that you think might go on a CV? And she said, well, I am under 18 European light featherweight boxing champion. And I said, really? She said, yes, I am. I won last year. And I said, where were you going to put it in your CV? And she said, well, I'm not applying for a job as a boxer. I wasn't going to bother. Right? I told her that should be in capital letters, in red, underlined at the top of your CV, because people know you're a winner if you've got that. They know that you've been successful, you've really worked hard, you're not going to give up. All these, that's what it means. So do all these and get experience in societies and clubs and organizations like that and put them on your CV. First aid is another one. I've always kept up with my first aid qualifications just because I think it's something we should all do. I don't think you should be able to pass your driving test until you've got a first aid qualification. But every business of a certain size has to have a first aider on the site. If you've already got that first aid qualification, then you've basically got your foot in the door. And life-saving the same and all those kind of things. It really works to have those things on your CV. There then are also other routes to success other than university, principally apprenticeships. Okay, I don't mean apprenticeships at Tesco's where you learn to stack baked beans. I've met people who are apprentice bar workers, which is just a way of paying bar staff less because the minimum wage for apprenticeships is less. I mean the kind of thing my dad did, which he left school at 14 and spent 7 years becoming an apprentice. And at the end of it, he could build you a railway engine. If you gave him enough time and the materials, he knew everything. He could build you a railway engine. I've met people who are aeronautical apprenticeships, accountancy apprenticeships. You will get the same qualifications as somebody who does a degree in accountancy, and you'll get paid to do it. The competition is intense for these positions, but they're very, very good ways of getting ahead. You avoid student debt. You get more experience than the people who've been to university, and there doesn't seem really to be any kind of snobbish value that, this person went to university, I did the apprenticeship. It doesn't work out. These are perfectly good jobs and very good ways of getting into them. Another way is, of course, to join the armed forces or something similar. If you join the armed forces, it's not all about marching and shooting people. They need people who maintain aircraft engines in the RAF and the Army Air Corps and the Navy, marine engines, electronics, radar, electrical systems, everything. needs maintaining, and it needs to work first time every time, because you're going to need it first time. If you're in the armed forces, it's got to work when you need it. So they're very, very good at training. They're very good at skills. You can leave after 5 or 6 years and you will get a job anywhere. Okay, because people really know that you've got the qualifications and the experience as well. All right. And the great benefit you have in this country is that those qualifications and that education is honest and well respected around the world. Countries like China and India spend a fortune sending their best students to universities in America and England and France and Australia for a reason. The education system is better, but it's also honest. All right, you don't get a better A level because you bribed the teacher. You certainly can in some countries, you can't here. You don't get to university because your dad is a member of the Communist Party or is a friend of the local politician or has bribed the university, right? And that means that when you get the qualifications, which are independently audited, they are respected around the world. I don't just mean degrees, things like HNDs and technical qualifications. You know, if you want to fly on a plane in India, it's probably nice to know that the guy didn't get his qualifications through bribery. And that's, you know, that's something, a big advantage we have in this country. Okay. Finally, I'll just talk about quality of life. Everything I've said up till now is how to get a job, how to get it at the top of the pile, you know, what kind of things will work. You've got to think about quality of life as well. Okay. I know you're all working hard at school, but when you leave for the world of work, you will be working at least 40 or 50 hours a week, and you will get at most 4 weeks holiday a year, and that will last for 50 years. All right. It is probably a good idea that you do something you enjoy, because you're going to be spending an awful lot of time doing it. Right? There are only 4 kinds of jobs. There are ones you hate that pay badly. There are ones you hate that pay well. There are ones you love that pay badly, and there are ones you love that pay well. The last one's the best one. You know, I'm not giving much away by telling you that, I know, but they're quite difficult to get. I was lucky. I really liked journalism. I always wanted to work at the BBC, and it was relatively well paid. But I found out quite early that 90% of the world's population do jobs they hate. They do not want to get up on a Monday morning and go to work. The only reason they do it is because they need the money, right? Do not be in that situation, right? The second best is to have a job that you love but doesn't pay very well, because you'll be happy, you know, a very large amount of time you'll be at work doing something you want. And if you can turn your hobby or your interest into a business or a job, be it gardening or deep sea diving, or you know, being a train driver because you're a secret train watcher, or you're working for the RSPB because you love birds, or whatever it is, do that. And you know, you're never going to be rich, but you are going to be happy. Okay. Finally, I know some of you will be listening because you wanted to know how to get into journalism. So I'm just going to spend a minute or two on that. Okay. Journalism is a fascinating career. I still love it. I've always loved it. I was lucky to work for the BBC, which is a very good organisation, and it has a guaranteed income, which was very nice, because newspapers are dying. Their business model is under attack. They haven't got the advertising revenue, especially at the moment, coming in. There are always cuts. Circulation is falling. They're being attacked by the internet. They have this problem that people who get their news on the internet don't think they need journalism because they know everything, which they don't actually, but they think they don't need any help. But it's still a very interesting job. And if you want to go into it, I wouldn't stand in your way. Just 2 things. Bring something to the party. The BBC employs 1 media correspondent, but it has reporters covering everything from accountancy to zoology, sports, international affairs, science, climate change, health, everything. So do a degree in a subject you're interested in, and then go on and do a postgrad in journalism, and then concentrate in that area. So you'll be reporting on something you're really interested in. I hope you'll ask me some more questions about that, because I'm about to stop after my 20 minutes is up. But just to reiterate, there are no big bangs and whistles at the end of this talk. It's really quite boring. Education works, technology is king, and do something you'll love, and you'll do pretty well. Thank you for listening.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Jonty. And we've had a lot of questions submitted, so we'll go through a few of those now, if that's okay.
Yep, sure.
Fantastic. So Keldon asks, who inspired you to become a journalist?
I wasn't actually inspired by one person, although when I was growing up, the Vietnam War was on. So there were a lot of people like Martin Bell, who's a famous BBC correspondent who was reporting from Vietnam, who I did then get a chance to work with very late in his career. And he was a genius, and I loved working with him. But it was the fact that I watched the Vietnam War, which was probably the most covered war journalistically in world history. And there were moments like when the Americans finally retreated from Vietnam, all these people fled the country in helicopters to the American Navy ships that were off the coast of Vietnam. And they got so crowded that they just pushed the helicopters into the sea, and so another could land. And I remember watching that and I'm thinking, those things cost £10 million each, and they're just throwing them away. This is a sign of the scale of the catastrophe, and I would love to be there and report on it. So that's why I went into it. And I think lots of journalists go into it for that reason. They want to be there when something important is happening. And you do get a chance to do that. I mean, I concentrate in business and economics, but I have been in some really interesting places. I was in New York after 9/11 for about 2 weeks, and that was probably some of the best journalism I did. It was absolutely harrowing. It was very difficult. It was very uncomfortable, but it was an important thing to do. And if you want to go into journalism, it's you want to help explain to people what's really going on. That's what will drive you.
Fantastic. Let me find our next question. Elisa asks, what was your favourite subject at school?
Oh, history. It was always history. I read history all the time, even now, and I would recommend it to anyone because everything is history. Even that sentence is history now. It's you know, if you're interested in science, the history of science is fascinating, and it will help you get up to speed with how we got to where we are in science. Medicine is the same. Military history, political history, economic, anything, art history. That everything we've saved from past generations is available for you to look at if you study history, and there are great lessons to be learned, and it's great fun.
Fantastic. Another question that's been submitted is, what did you want to be when you were little? Did you always want to be a journalist?
No, actually, nobody believes me now, but I was planning to join the Navy. My family had several people in the Navy, and I was in the Naval Cadets, and I was totally planning to go. And then my eyesight went, and I couldn't get into the bit I wanted to. I should probably have joined. I still could have joined as an officer, but not in the bit I wanted to. And I kind of regret not doing it now, because it would have been really interesting. But I would have joined just in time for the Falklands War, so it probably wasn't a very bright idea. But I was planning to join the Navy.
And another question is, how valuable do you think being bilingual is when it comes to applying for a job?
Well, interesting enough, in this country, it doesn't. It's not that important because we're arrogant and we think that everybody speaks English. But I think it is very important. I left school without any languages, and I've spent an awful lot of time and money learning French, and it's very useful. And like they say, you don't really understand a foreign country if you don't speak the language. And as Rudyard Kipling said, what knows he of England who only England knows? That, you know, going abroad and then seeing your own country from another perspective, another angle, is very important. Unfortunately, being bilingual doesn't really pay. It doesn't really increase your salary very much. It does in other countries, but it doesn't really in the UK, mainly because we're able to attract so many other foreigners who speak those languages. But I would say, especially in journalism, I'd say in journalism it's vital. In the BBC, I think the majority of people have at least one second language. And if you think about it, if you're going to report in Russia and you don't speak Russian, you're just not going to get anywhere. Same in France, same in Africa. You know, we have people who speak, 5 or 6 African languages in the BBC, and they couldn't do their business if they don't. So I think it's very important. And if I was going to say, if you're going into journalism, what degree would I do? I'd say do a joint honours, do a language, and then a subject, another, do French and science, or German and maths or something, because the languages are very important in journalism.
Fantastic. And based on your advice earlier in the session about reading, Lucy asks, what's your favourite book?
Well, it sounds very pretentious, but I read War and Peace, and it was War and Peace is always this massive volume, and everyone kind of goes, "Is it really as good as everyone says?" It is. It's absolutely fantastic. The other one is there's a book called The Leopard. By is it Lampedusa? I think it is Lampedusa, which is an Italian, it's a relatively short Italian novel about a duke who's failing to deal with Italy becoming a democracy and moving away from royalty and deference and all that kind of thing, which doesn't sound very interesting, but it is the most beautifully written and intelligent book I've ever read. It is absolutely fantastic. It just evokes the time and the place and the characters perfectly, and it's just a joy to read.
Wonderful. Another question submitted, this time from Anna. Anna asks, what did you do to build up your CV when you were younger to prepare yourself for a career in journalism?
Well, actually, when I was at university, I did student radio, which sounds very grand. Actually, what happened was there was an illegal transmitter that was passed from student to student as they left the university, and my flatmate happened to inherit it. And he did a lot of DJing, so he had the record collection and a deck to play it on, and he had a transmitter, so he turned it into a pirate radio station. And since I was sharing the flat, he used to make me do the news in the morning, so I'd get up and blatantly nick the news off the BBC and then read it out again on Radio Hawthorns, which is what it was called, and then that kind of took pride of place on my CV, because I was head of news at Radio Hawthorns, when in fact I was the only person there. So it was quite easy to be head of something when you're the only person there. So that's what I did. After I left there, I got a job working for British Telecom. I was offered a place at Journalism College, London School of Printing, but I actually got a job, and I went back to them and they said, well, that's the kind of job we'd expect you to get if you'd done the course, so why don't you just take the job? And I did 2 years there learning basically core skills. It was not very dramatic, but I learned how to read stuff, how to edit sound, how to write properly, all that kind of stuff. And then from there I joined the BBC.
Fantastic. Another question is about the advice that you would give to your younger self.
Yeah, well, this is quite interesting. That's a very good question, because the bit I was going to mention is that I'm a complete hypocrite, because I didn't do any of the things I just told you to do in that talk. I messed around at school. I went to a very good school, and I messed around, had a lot of fun, and didn't get any A levels. And I ended up, therefore, going to work in a bank. And my God, it was boring. After the first week, I thought, I really can't stand this. And so I did something that was actually quite difficult to do. And I went back to school in evening classes while holding down a full-time job. And I did 2 A levels in 1 year and got into university. It nearly killed me. I've never worked so hard in my life. So the point is, if you leave school and you haven't got the qualifications you want, you can do something about it. I did. But from my experience, I would tell you, do it right first time. I wish I'd done it right first time, because it would have saved an awful lot of time and effort and work. And you have all the facilities, you've got all the chances, you've got all the teachers. Take advantage of it now, because it is much more difficult and much more painful. You have to do it yourself later.
Fantastic. Another question, which is absolutely fantastic, as you mentioned your dog earlier. What's your dog's name?
He's called Bertie.
Bertie, fantastic.
He's a Portuguese water dog, and you can all look them up. The Obamas had a couple of Portuguese water dogs. He's absolutely cute. My wife thinks he's named after Bertram Wooster from the Jeeves novels, but I named him after Admiral Sir Bertram Ramsay, who was an admiral in the Second World War. You should look him up. He was a very interesting guy.
Fantastic. And Molly asks, was there ever a time when you thought something was going to be easy, but it actually ended up being really difficult? And how did you overcome that?
Yeah, I suppose there is, yeah. When I first started at the BBC, I had a temporary 6-month attachment on something called The World at One, which is still going on. It's on Radio 4 at 1 o'clock. It's the main news programme. And the first day I was there, they asked me to do a story on cricket, which I don't know that much about. and I made a complete cock up of the whole thing. And with about 10 minutes to go before we were on air, I had to go to the editor and said, you know, that 5-minute report on cricket, it's not going to happen. I've completely failed. It's all gone wrong. I haven't got anything to broadcast. And he very calmly took a backup tape, which was on the wall, went and played it and didn't say anything. And then when the program was over, he took me into his room and he tore me to pieces. You know, how could you fail to do this? Why didn't you tell us earlier? Why didn't you ask for help? What kind of idiot are you? You know, this is not a very difficult one, you know. And I thought, my God, you know, my career is over. And I went into the next day, and I'll tell you how bad it was. I went in the next day, I took a book with me because I was sure he was never going to give me a story again, and I was going to have to sit there for 6 months doing nothing. And he gave me the lead story, right? He gave me the lead story. I would have walked over broken glass for that man, right? Because he taught me that it isn't just, oh, it'll be easy. You just get an interview here and an interview there and put it together and it'll be all right on the night. You've got to plan and work at it, and you've got to be damn serious about it. And you've learnt your lesson, now get on with it. And 30 years later, I still used to remember that lesson when I started out on a story. It's not as easy as you think. You better check you've got it right.
Fantastic. That's really interesting. And Elisa has asked, what's the most interesting story you've worked on or come across?
Oh, that's a very good question. New York after 9/11 was very interesting, but actually, the most exciting and interesting one I ever did was I was at an economics summit in Genoa, which was pretty boring. And then Mount Etna erupted in Sicily. And the BBC said, well, you're already in Italy. Why don't you go and report on that? Because the local town was threatened with lava flow and all this kind of stuff. And I went there and we just had the most fascinating time. It was very hard work because it takes about 2 hours to drive to the top of Mount Etna. So it was like a 4-hour commute if we did anything. And we were there from 6 in the morning till 10 at night. And but it was really exciting. We did an endless live TVs with lava flowing around us. And I remember doing radio in which somebody said to me, is it hot? And I said, well, I'm standing in front of 1 million tons of molten rock. Of course it's hot, you know. And then right at the end, we hired a helicopter and flew over Mount Etna as it was erupting and recorded these live TV and radio pieces and sent it back. And it really sounded and looked fantastic. It was really interesting. It was very dramatic. The weather was fantastic. And flying around Sicily in a helicopter for work is quite a treat. And it was really fun. And, you know, if you go into journalism, there will be days like that. They're not every day. It's not every year, but, you know, there will be times when you think not many people get to do this. And it's great fun.
Absolutely not. That's such an amazing memory to be able to have as part of your job, and to be able to do that is so exciting. Keldon has asked, how much does a freelance journalist differ from a correspondent for television?
There are lots of freelancers in journalism. I left the BBC because there was a round of redundancies coming up. Freelance, you have to keep coming up with ideas, and, you know, 4 out of 5 of them will get rejected. You have to have quite a few irons in the fire, so you can't just work for one person. You have to make lots of contacts and offer stuff to different people. Whereas if you're just working at the BBC, you go in and, you know, you can come up with an idea and sell it to someone, or there's something on the diary that's going to happen and you're going to be doing it. So it's much more of a production line. You've got all the support. You've got, I mean, the thing I miss most from the BBC, funnily enough, is computer support. I never thought I'd say that, but when you've got to fix your own email, all of a sudden those geeky guys in the back room become very, very important. So, you know, you have to look after yourself and sell yourself more. But then I get to do stuff I'm interested in. I don't have to do run-of-the-mill stuff just because it comes up. So in economics and business, you know, I've done the unemployment figures, which come out monthly, every month for 30 years. The same with inflation figures and the growth figures and everything, you know. And now I don't have to do that. And actually, that's really nice. I can pick and choose the stuff I want to do.
Fantastic. You've also been asked what sort of stuff sticks out on a CV. Does charity work and things like that make a big difference when applying for jobs? Yeah,
absolutely. I forgot to mention that. During the lockdown, you know, if you should be out helping people. If you're young and fit, delivering food, mowing your neighbour's lawn, helping prepare meals, visiting care homes, all that kind of stuff if you can, and put that on your CV. It really looks good, because employers want to know that you're a caring, considerate person who goes the extra mile for friends and colleagues and other people. And also, it's something you should do anyway. I mean, I always say at the end of the long talks, you don't know how lucky you are living in a Western economically developed democracy, and you should put stuff back. If you're well educated, if you've got a good job, then use some of those skills. If you're an accountant, then you should be doing the accounts for a local charity for free. If you're a lawyer, you should be offering them stuff for free. If you're a lorry driver, you should be driving stuff for them for free. Lots of charities need lots of help, and you will have the skills and the ability and the time to do that, and you really should.
Fantastic. And Chardonnay asks, if you could change your role or your job, what would you change it to? I don't know, actually. That's a very good question. In journalism, I did spend two periods being Europe correspondent in Brussels, and I really enjoyed that. But I only got to do it for 6 months at a go, and I would have liked to have done that for 2 or 3 years. And I didn't really get the chance. So if they offered me that job, I'd probably bite their hand off and go back and do it again. Fantastic. And you've also been asked, do you get nervous when talking and presenting?
That is probably, there are 2 questions we always get asked as journalists. One is, do you come up with your own ideas, or do they give you stories to cover? And the second is, do you get nervous? The first time I did a live broadcast on Radio 4, apparently it went very well, but I can't remember because it's a complete blank. I just went total plan. I just read it out and ran for the door. After that, it was a cinch. You get used to it. It's like saying, do you get nervous making coffee in Nero's, or do you get nervous working on a production line or driving a lorry? You don't. You're used to it, and it's just part of your everyday thing. I used to occasionally check my pulse rate when I was about to do I've gone on air with about 5 seconds to spare live, from a breaking story in the middle of a thunderstorm, and I've checked my heart rate and it hasn't moved an inch. So no, you just don't get used to it.
You've also been asked if there's any advice that you would give to someone trying to go into presenting as a career.
Yeah, you mean TV presenting, or nearly all presenters start off doing something else. Actually, I mean, there isn't really a career path to being a presenter. You become a journalist, and then they notice that you're very good at presenting, or you volunteer to do 2 a.m. shifts on a local radio station on top of your job, and then you get experience and so on. Some of the celebrity presenters, people who do things like Strictly and so on. I remember one of them saying she was working as a journalist, and she just wrote to all the local charities saying, if you've got a video or a radio advert or anything you want to do, I will voice it up for free. And she got endless work experience of presenting and being the face of different things. And then she put that on a show reel and sent it to bigger organizations. And that's how she moved up to the mainstream. But lots of people who do sports or business, are asked to present. Some of them aren't very good at it. The one thing I'd say is the people you do see, especially in things like sports and so on, are very, very, very good. It is very easy to hide how difficult it is. They make it look very, very easy. But they are some of the best journalists you will ever meet. I mean, being able to do a live sports program when you've got results coming in from around the world, that is phenomenally difficult, and you have to make it look effortless. And it's only the best of the best of the best to get to do that. But if you want to do that, start out small, do a lot of unpopular shifts, and keep selling yourself to the boss, and you might make it.
Fantastic. And I think we have time for one final question, and that is from Tan, and it is, what work experience would you recommend for a career in journalism?
Yeah, I don't know if I said it, but journalism is one of those jobs where you've got to have work experience to get a job, and you can't get a job without work experience. You can't get work experience without a job. So student radio, as I said, hospital radio if it's still going, online. There are lots of online podcasts and blogs and things like that. if you're at school, do the school magazine. If you're at school or university, your local paper probably only has 1 or 2 reporters. So go along and say, I will cover a local sports match for you. I will cover a local fete for you. I'll do it for free, but I just want my name on it. And then you start making a collection of articles that have got your name on it. Be they online, in a paper, on the local radio, on hospital radio, anything. And then when you present that to people, they'll say, well, we know you can write, we know you can read, we know you can do online, you know, you can prove it. So work experience is important, and they will want you to do that. Very few people go into journalism saying, well, I've never done any of it at all, but I've decided to give it a go. I mean, it's a very, very competitive industry, and they'll want to see that you've been dedicated to it for quite a period of time before you get a fee-paying job, something that pays you a wage.
Wonderful. And finally, it'd be really interesting to hear from you. What's the one thing that you love the most about your job?
Well, I'm not a great ego. Lots of people do it because they like to hear their voice on the radio and all that stuff. I really like explaining complicated issues. So I should say there are many different types of journalism. There's on the spot. There's, you know, daily, weekly. You know, I really like doing documentaries in which I can spend half an hour explaining a really complicated issue with lots of experts, lots of sounds, lots of music and color and everything, and weaving it all together with the help of a whole team of people. And you can make a really interesting half-hour program that explains something very difficult and complicated in simple to understand ways. It takes a lot of work and it's quite hard, but it's very, very rewarding.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Jonty. It really is appreciated. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. A huge thank you to everyone who tuned in. A short announcement for those students who've been asked to complete the talk activity sheet by your school or college. The colour for this talk is navy. There's also a short feedback form that has been added to the Q&A thread. It'd be great if you were able to complete that and give us your thoughts. Jonty, thank you so much for making the time to join us today and answering our viewers' questions. It's been a real joy, and I think there's some really useful practical considerations and tips for our viewers to take away when thinking about their future careers.
Well, I hope so, and stay safe, everyone.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing everyone next week. Have a great weekend.